Hello and welcome to today's lesson. We're going to be looking at configuring currency data. That's within the context of our data management and data administration series of lessons. So we're working our way through dealing today with really the last of the configuration points, where we think about the setup of the whole relationship of different currencies, working with quotes and orders and the price lists that we can have as well. This is the final point before we start looking on at some of the reporting elements of that, like the idea of sales forecasting. So in this lesson, we're going to be looking specifically at the knowledge needed to understand how to configure currency data inside Sage CRM. And to understand this, we're going to start by looking at how a user experiences the idea of working with different currencies. And I'm going to start by logging on as a sales user. Here, I'm logging on as actually a sales manager, Susan May, within the demo data. And you can see I've come in here and immediately I am looking at information that is reporting to Susan May information in her home currency, which happens to be US dollars. You can see that reflected within the pipeline that we're looking at, and we might see that as well within the context of the amounts that are shown as well in the columns. But if I head off here and look at a specific opportunity, we can see that this has been sold in a different currency. If I scroll down and I can look a little bit further down the screen, I'm looking at the status and the opportunity total information. If I highlight these for you, you can see that the sales have been made in euros, even though we know from the earlier screen that Susan May is reporting in her natural state in US dollars. So her internal reporting has to be done in US dollars, but she's making sales in euros. So the individual transactions that make up that, she needs some sort of ballpark figure for that. Now, what we've got, as we can see here, is the information displayed with the actual sales figure as the top figure, but you'll notice underneath you've got the US dollars at, and then there is an exchange rate that is being given here. We'll look at where this is set up in a second. But before we do that, we should really go off and look at the idea of how Susan May can, as a user, can control the experience that she has of different using different currencies. Because although we're going to see in a moment that the system is going to assume that there is a base currency, an individual user within their preferences can come and change whatever currency that they want to use. That's the currency. As you can see, as I switch over this is US dollars, as we can see here. That could be changed to any of the currencies allowed within the system. And then that would be Susan May's reporting and main interface currency, not necessarily what the user sells in or carries out the transactions within. So if I think about this for a moment, I mentioned that there was a base currency, and there is. When you come to install Sage CRM, it runs through some of the localization information that you're choosing. So if you're in North America, you'll have to make a decision as to whether you're installing with US dollars or whether you're installing with Canadian dollars. And what we've got certainly in my system, that when I installed it within a British context, so it is UK pounds that are being used. That's the base currency. With other currencies, within the system, all having an exchange rate relating between them and the base currency. So that means that if, like Susan May, is selling in euros but reporting in dollars, a triangulation takes place where the currency, first of all, has to be converted to the base currency and then on to the display currency. So selling in dollars, selling in euros, first converting that into pounds, and then displaying it in dollars. That's the idea then of this triangulation that has taken place. We can start to explore this more from the system administrator's point of view. So if I click in here, we can now go off to look at where the system administrator actually sets this up. And we're going to go, of course, into administration and then into the data management area. So administration, data management, and then we can see here that we've got two options for configuring the currency information. There's first of all the currency configuration option, and then there is the different currencies that you're using. Now, the reason why that there's the two options is, first of all, we have to make a decision about what we want or how we want to approach the concept of currencies within the system. Do we want to allow for the idea that we're going to work with multiple jurisdictions where different currencies are used? You can see here that this is where the base currency is set. So I can choose, if necessary, I could choose a different currency. But importantly, it's here as well. I could set to say, well, I only ever want to use the one currency, which is the single currency, which is the base currency of the system. In a previous lesson, when we were looking at the idea of price lists, you can then look to simplify and create a very simple environment easily within Sage CRM, where you are just looking at a single currency system with a single price list known as the default price list, and not using things like units of measure to make things a little bit more complex when it comes to creating the price list matrix. But right now, for us here, we can see that I've chosen to keep using multiple currencies. I'm not altering things away from the base currency. And so what I can do is I can then progress that and start to come and look at the settings for the currency. What we've got now is the default. The base currency doesn't have an exchange rate. It's 1-to-1 for itself. So you can see that my system is using the British pound, and then we've got settings here. Now, these settings are things that are how you approach the idea of these currencies and their settings in terms of the exchange rate is very much down to the policies that you have within an organization. So if I think about the process of creating a new currency, we can see that what we need to do is give it using one of the ISO International Standards Organization currency codes, then set up a precision, and then do the exchange rate with the base currency. So in my case, I'm going to add in Mexican pesos, so I can choose to add in the precision that we're using for that, and then the exchange rate, and then choose to save. So I am in the process of creating here, as we can see, my new currency. I've got that listed out here now. Any of these currencies I could go back and change, and this is what I was hinting at in that your organization will have a different policy really into the way in which exchange rates are handled. The the way in which really Sage CRM is set up is that it's assuming that your exchange rate in a multi-currency environment is an indicative, not an actual exchange rate. It's to allow for organizations to get a sense of, well, if we're selling in one currency, what does it mean in our home currency, to give you a ballpark figure when you're looking at things like the sales forecasting figures to standardize. You could set up routines, and this with web services and with API calls, to be updating the forecast tables on a daily basis. That's a customization and not part of the standard behavior. Otherwise, it's just a process of going in and editing this as and when your organization feels that you need to have that. And that would be typically on a yearly basis when you're starting to do your planning for budgets and planning for sales targets. As we remind ourselves that we might have added another currency into the mix, but it's always done on the basis of triangulation. And so the change that we've made here, if we were to go back and think about the experience of the of our preferences, we can change whatever preference that we want to use. I'm going to go back and now look at an opportunity now, and then remind ourselves about what was happening in that screen, where you've got the currency that you're selling and the currency that is your reporting currency. Now, I said that today was a shorter lesson. We've looked then at the user experience. We've looked at the management setup for the currencies. Let's see if you've got any questions on that. Thanks. See you next week. Bye-bye.